Hi, Craig Urquhart here, and welcome to another installment of Berlin Conversations, where I interview creative artists, people working here in Berlin, and just very interesting people that make up the city of Berlin. And today I have with me a friend and a colleague, a wonderful musician from America. His name is Levi Hammer, and I would like to say welcome. Hi. So nice that you're here.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having
coming
me.
by. It's really sweet. Yeah, the weather's been pretty lousy today, and I'm
This is Berlin for you. Gray.
yeah,
There's no spring.
yeah. So, you identify as a musician, and that encompasses a lot of various aspects of your life. So, when you say musician, what do you mean by that?
Thank you for asking that. I do identify as a musician, and I do many different things. I'm a conductor. As a conductor, I work with orchestras, youth orchestras, opera companies, and I assist some of the great conductors of our time. And I'm also a pianist. I occasionally play a solo program or a small, modest solo offering.
Oh, I just heard you give a recital at the Schoenberg Center in Vienna, and that was not a modest recital.
Okay, well...
But we'll talk about that
okay.
later.
Well, yes, I still play the piano. And I work with singers and instrumentalists, doing chamber music. As a singer, I love accompanying the song repertoire. And of course, piano is also an incredible tool for understanding how music works and getting into the nitty-gritty of everything. And yeah, I think that sums it up quite well.
Okay, good. So how did you get involved with music, and what made you want to pursue it?
Pursue it, I don't think I ever made that decision. I think it's just something that I did. But how did I get involved? I have a very typical American musician story. My parents thought I should take piano lessons, and I did. Both my sister and I did, and then we both learned various other instruments, and I took to it, and somehow I had a greedy yearning to just learn as much as I could about the craft of music. And so I think there are two aspects of my childhood and adolescent development that were important to me. One was, aside from the private studies I had as a piano student and studying a couple of other instruments, I had music in the church, going to a really remarkable church that did things like Bach cantatas, Handel Messiah every year. Really remarkable music in addition to the traditional hymns, even the German Requiem of Brahms, which we did in English. And also my public school experience as an adolescent.
This was in the Midwest?
Which was in Iowa and then Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people ask me where I'm from, I always say I'm from Iowa, because I think it's right in the center of the country. Yeah. There's nothing more like quintessentially American than saying you're from Iowa.
Right.
I think. But yes, my public school music education experiences were really important. I had amazing public school music educators, and I was in the choir and in the orchestra and in the band and in the theater program. And these frontline music educators were really remarkable musicians and quality people who shared the rigorous craft and the hard work that goes into studying music, and also, probably more importantly, is the fun of it. And so I appreciate those experiences very much, and I miss that connection to like grassroots music making. And one of the other things that I miss in my present phase in life is a connection to youth orchestras, because I grew up in youth orchestras. That's probably my most formative experience as a musician. And then in the 5 years that I lived in Ohio before moving to Germany, I conducted a youth orchestra, and that too, being on the other side, was a formative experience. And I love working with youth orchestras, and I miss it because I don't do it much now.
A lot of the great conductors enjoy doing them too. I mean, I know that Christoph Eschenbach loves to work with youth orchestras. Leonard Bernstein used to love to work with youth orchestras. Claudio Abbado did. I mean, there's something about a youth orchestra that I find really exciting, because they enjoy it. It's not a job. And I love the enthusiasm and the desire to do well. It's really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah. And the infectious energy, and just the willing to take chances, and the lack of fear of making a mistake. And when somebody makes a mistake, we say, "Oh, how fascinating," and move on.
Yeah, it happens. Gosh. But there was no moment okay, this is my life. I'm going to do music.
No. I did not have a calling, a moment where the divine presence came down and said, become a musician. Okay. But I did, since I'm talking to the very special person that is Craig Urquhart, I did have a musical hero, and that was your friend and your colleague was Leonard Bernstein. And so Lenny, as I feel comfortable calling him.
Yeah, everybody does.
Even though I didn't know who he was until he was already gone. As a teenager, I devoured everything I could about him, and I learned as much about him in his life and his ideas and his music, of course, and also his interpretive life as a conductor and pianist. And that's how we connected originally. I came in, I think, tapped your shoulder and said, "Hi, Mr. Urquhart."
Mr. Well, I think I want to share one little detail about Lenny with you. That they ask on your passport when you make an application or something, what your calling is or what your job is. And he wrote musician. Just that's it.
Left it at that.
Yeah.
Not composer.
Not composer.
Conductor.
He was a musician.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you're in good company.
Good company indeed. Yeah.
So, you did your undergraduate work in Texas, is that right?
In Arizona.
Arizona.
Yeah.
And then did you go to Rice? Am I right?
I did an undergraduate in Arizona, where where we moved from Iowa, and where my family still lives. And then I did master's in Houston at Rice. And then I was out of school for a good long while. And then when I was back in Ohio doing the youth orchestra, I did a doctorate at CCM, the Cincinnati Conservatory.
Oh, incredible. That's wonderful schools. Yeah. So then how did you end up in Germany?
So at the end of this time in Ohio, I was finishing up my doctoral coursework, and I didn't have a job for the first time in my life, really. And I had studied German. I had heard of this German opera house system, and I had, at that time, for an American, a pretty extensive experience in opera, which for a German was not very extensive, but for an American it was. And I thought, oh, well, I'll try out the German opera house system. So I got a job here in Berlin at the Komische Oper.
Good place to start.
A really cool house, yeah. I call it the hottest house in Germany. One of the 3 houses in Berlin, and each has its own profile. The Komische is the most cutting edge, I would say. But yeah, so I worked as a korrepetitor, playing piano for opera productions, and that was my first job in Germany, and it was trial by fire, because you're just thrown in and you have to learn so much music so quickly. I think in that first season I learned 14 operas.
Wow.
And so...
was Grand Macabre one of them?
Grand Macabre wasn't one. But
I remember seeing that production there.
I missed that. I would like to have done that. But Ayubert Raimann's Medea was, which was quite a handful. And I remember that year when I was learning so much music all at once that every morning I would wake up and I would think, and run to the piano and think, what do I have to play in 2 hours? And like review it, play it as well as I could in the moment, and then take a shower and go to work.
Yeah, it's not an easy job. I know. I have other friends that do that too. It's like, and now I'm always amazed. You guys can sit down and just play Salome, or to play The Ring or something. It's incredible.
Well, when you're in the opera house system, you by osmosis learn so much from your colleagues. You're like, you think, oh, I don't know how to play this, and you see, oh, that's how you do it. Oh, you leave out those notes. Okay, now I got it. And I always think, and now that I'm out of that system, probably permanently, I think about those colleagues, and the pianists are the people who run an opera house. The conductors, the intendants might think it's them, but really the opera house functions because of the pianists and the assistant directors.
Okay. You want that on tape?
That's okay. Anyone can admit that.
Oh gosh! And recently you've been. I heard you do. Heard you do Cabaret in Wiesbaden, where you conducted the production from the keyboard with a 14-piece orchestra, or how big?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. It was incredible.
Thank you.
And then I also saw you do the Three Penny Opera, as we say in English, here in Berlin at the Berliner Ensemble. That was founded by Mr. Weill himself, right?
Oh, well, Bertolt Brecht.
Bertolt Brecht,
Yeah,
Kurt Weill, Bertolt Brecht.
But that was where it was premiered.
Yeah. So that was amazing. Yeah. It was amazing. And and then recently you've been working with Gustavo Dudamel, and what project was that?
I've been super lucky to assist and help prepare productions, all Wagner productions for Gustavo in Los Angeles, and that's been really fun because Wagner is like a drug, and you can't get enough of it, or I can't get enough of it anyway, and so to do those pieces with him, Valkyrie, Tristan, and then I'll do Rheingold with him next season. It's really fun just to, get your hands in that music, and even if you're doing a production for the second time. I did my Valkyrie with him for the first time, my first Valkyrie, and then Tristan was my second time doing Tristan, and then the Rheingold will be my second time doing it. And with these giant pieces of music, you need time to get to know them. So it's especially a privilege to do it a second time, and then to prepare a production for Gustavo is really fun because he's just the best, and I love learning from him and watching how he does things, and hopefully contributing a little something along the way myself.
So when you say preparing a production, what does that mean?
Usually, and this is something that I've been doing quite a bit for the last couple of years, usually for a big opera like a Wagner opera that is just monumental, you bring in someone like me that can prepare the production. So that means supervising all that's happening musically, making sure the cast is prepared, and supervising things musically, like, taking care of a singer, making sure they're in good voice, supporting them in any way that they need support, giving them feedback when they need it, knowing where to back off, and knowing when to push them, and to feel that, and you really have to know the piece well enough to jump in and conduct it yourself if you need to, which is a lot of work to prepare these giant pieces. You know, it takes many months of preparation, on my part anyway. Maybe some people can learn it faster than I can.
I don't know.
Yeah, and then being on hand and helping a conductor like Gustavo with feedback on balance, because if you're conducting the orchestra, you don't know how it actually sounds 20 meters away.
Right.
And so you need somebody else's ear in the hall to help you with that. And I hope I'm able to help.
Yeah, so you really prepare
the
the singers to make sure when they show up to the first rehearsal with the conductor that they're prepared.
That they're prepared, of course. Yeah. And singers of this caliber, they're always prepared.
Yeah, but
almost always.
But they do need. I know singers do need a lot of emotional support.
Yeah.
It's true. And this summer you're going to be working with another great conductor, Sir Simon Rattle. Is that right?
Yeah.
What project is that?
This is Wozzeck.
Oh my God.
Which for me is just oops! I just knocked my mic. This is Wozzeck, which for me is just a dream piece. It's a bucket list piece for me because of my obsession with the Second Viennese School, and then to do it with Simon, who has grown up on the music of Schoenberg, Berg, and Weber, and he even told me once that he learned to read music as a kid by looking at a score of the Schoenberg Opus 16, 5 orchestra pieces.
I didn't know that.
And just listening along with the recording, and to think that that's how he learned how to read music. Maybe he's exaggerating a bit, but he knows this music so well. So at the moment I'm spending a lot of time with Wozzeck, struggling with Wozzeck to learn it properly.
And where is that going to be?
That's in France, at Aix-en-Provence. And
terrible place to be in the summer.
Yes, it's paradise on earth.
Yeah.
And then I was also with Simon 2 years ago to do Tristan there with him. And that's quite a privilege, I have to say.
Yeah. Now, I recently, as I mentioned, was in Vienna at the Schoenberg Center, where you presented a rather ambitious program, and it was called Gershwin in Vienna. And it was really impressive. And could you speak a little bit about it and the motivation and how you constructed the program and what was on it? Because you're mentioning your passion for the Second Viennese School, and maybe you could even mention what the Second Viennese School is, because some of our listeners may not be aware of it.
Yes. So my idea for this project was, first of all, because I had some free time in the schedule. And something that I continually done for years now is whenever I have free time in the schedule, I turn to the piano and work on something that is a life project of mine. And so with this time, I thought, okay, well, I would like to unite two sides of my personality into a program. One being which I guess the two sides of my musical education and my musical upbringing. One is like the serious side, and one was the lighter side. By serious, I mean the great European tradition, and then by the lighter side, I mean the American popular music tradition that I grew up on. The American songbook, Gershwin, Kern, Cole Porter, these guys. Lenny. And I put this in quotes because I think you and I are of one mind, where we feel that music is music. And so I don't feel that there's a distinction, but somehow musical culture somehow still pretends there's a distinction. So the music of Gershwin has been with me since I was a kid. listening to it or playing it or whatever. And then, the Central European tradition, i.e. German-Austrian tradition, has also been with me since a kid, since I was a kid. But it wasn't until college really, that I discovered the Second Viennese School. And the Second Viennese School is a group of composers, the three most important of which are Arnold Schoenberg, Alban Berg, and Anton von Webern. Berg and Webern being students of Schoenberg. And this arose in the early 20th...
Berg is also the composer of Wozzeck.
Berg is the composer of Wozzeck, exactly. And so they are one of the main, if you're having a genealogy of modernism, they're one of the main branches of that musical family tree. And once you kind of like dip your toe into Schoenberg, you can get addicted to him. That's been my experience anyway. And the unfortunate perception of him is that he's this wild, crazy man who writes ugly music. And so even now, and especially in the States, less so in Germany, Schoenberg on a program is terrible for the box office. Mm-hmm. I hope in my small way I can change that perception. But this piano program I did, I wanted to unite Gershwin and Schoenberg and Berg and Webern because the similarities between them are a lot more interesting to me than the obvious dissimilarities. And there's all these historical encounters between those three of those four men. Gershwin never met Webern, but he did meet Berg in Vienna, and then he was very close to Schoenberg in California. Schoenberg having immigrated to LA to escape
the Nazis,
the Holocaust, of course. Mm-hmm. And so the little historical footnote that is always cited is that Schoenberg and Gershwin were tennis partners in California, which is really fun to imagine. And in fact, you don't need to imagine it. There's a short film of Schoenberg and Gershwin on, I think, Gershwin's tennis court.
Right.
But it's the musical similarities that are most interesting to me.
But I think most people wouldn't even think in those terms, that they would be similar. So give an example.
Well, let's see, the camera's not on the...
Well, you can just talk about
the piano,
it.
But to me, it's the like I could take certain harmonies out of Gershwin's magnum opus, Porgy and Bess, and change their rhythmic structure, change their voicing on the piano, orchestrate them in a Schoenbergian way with pure Gershwin harmonies, and you couldn't tell whether it was Gershwin or Schoenberg.
Yeah, interesting.
So there are harmonic structures that are similar, not the same, but similar. And so it illustrates, putting these musics together illustrates how Gershwin kept developing through his short life more and more into the direction of these modernists. And so in Porgy and Bess, there are so many sections that could be straight out of Wozzeck, could be straight out of Debussy preludes, could be straight out of Schoenberg 3 or 5 pieces for orchestra, opus 16, or straight out of Stravinsky for that matter. But you would never mistake Gershwin for any of those other composers.
No, he had his own voice, there's no question.
But the structures are there, and I can defend that to the last day of my life.
Well, you did their program. I mean, you played Schoenberg Opus 16? No,
Opus 11.
Yeah.
Opus 11 and 19.
19, the 5 short pieces. Yeah. And you played the Berg Sonata, and the Webern Variations and Gershwin, and it was a very interesting and compelling program. And
well, thank you for coming to Vienna for it.
Yeah, it was great. And it was such a treat because it was given at the Schoenberg Archive, and the day after your recital, we had an opportunity to go visit the archive. And that was quite amazing because the archivist, what can you remind me of her name?
Theresa Muxenender.
Yeah, she was opened up the archive, and there we were, looking at original manuscripts of Schoenberg, of the pieces that you'd played the day before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was. Yeah. It was nice to do that with you.
It was nice to do it with you. Yeah. Thank you for letting me tag along. And besides what we've talked about already, I know that you're starting to do some more conducting in the next upcoming months. Mm-hmm. And that's something you really are drawn to. You miss it a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to be working with a youth orchestra, I believe, in Greece? Is that right?
Yes. Through our friend Spiros. Mm-hmm. I'm heading to Greece a couple of times next season, and working with the youth orchestra there. That our friend Christoph Eschenbach has also worked with.
Yeah, great, super.
And I'm super excited about that because I absolutely love working with youth orchestras, as we said, and I think that as much as I would love to walk a couple kilometers that way and conduct the Berlin Philharmonic, I would be very happy to have a top-notch youth orchestra. Mm-hmm. So, and then also, since we're talking about Greece, the Athens State Symphony.
Well, that's a pretty amazing orchestra.
Yes, yeah. So I'm excited to go there, to go to Greece a couple times next season. Yeah.
And I think you have Albania on your calendar?
Yes, yeah. I'm
dying to go there.
Yeah, well, come on.
I will. Oh my gosh. So it seems like things are bubbling for you. You're keeping busy. Yeah.
Well, I think if you ask any conductor, they're always going to be longing for that, or that, or that, or Gurlieder, or Mahler 9, or Götterdämmerung, or whatever.
Well, at least you're working. Yeah. I know a lot of conductors, they are conductors, but they're not conducting, so that's amazing. And so why did you end up in Berlin? Was it just because you got the job at the Komische Oper, or had you been here before, or?
I had visited Berlin once, very briefly, but it was because of the job, and so we live across town from each other.
Right.
You're over here in the west, I'm over in the east, and I love Berlin. And if I had to choose anywhere in the world where I could choose to live, it would be in Berlin, in my neighborhood, in my apartment where I live.
Well,
right
then
now.
You're in an ideal situation.
Yeah.
And you have a great place there too. And one thing I like about Berlin is that it is a city made up of different cities. We call them Kietzes, right? We have. I'm in Charlottenburg. You're in Mitte. We were in Zehlendorf today, and Dahlem, and Schöneberg. And there's all different personalities, all within this one city. And so it's. I find that very exciting about it. And I also find the cultural life exciting. Do you partake of the cultural life as much as you can when you're not working?
I think I feel the same as you, Craig. After I moved here, I left Berlin for 2 years when I went to Wiesbaden to work at the opera there, and then I came back, and it was a bit of a risk to move back because I didn't have work at the time. I was starting as a freelancer at that moment, but I'm glad that I did. And what I love about Berlin is the way so many things are happening all the time. Whether you're talking about the amazing musical scene, I can't think of any other city in the world like it, except for perhaps Vienna and Paris. Sorry, New York City.
No.
As great as New York is.
It is, but it's,
um, and so it's sometimes painful to see like, oh, it's Friday night and I can go see Rattle conduct Mahler 9 with the Staatskapelle, which I actually did. But sometimes you have to say, no, I got to stay home and study because if I don't, I'm in trouble tomorrow morning, you know. So you have to pick and choose what you go see. But not just the musical things. I mean, the museum scene, the food culture of Berlin is so rich.
I know, it's so funny because 30 years ago you would never have thought of
really?
that. Yes.
Okay. And you know, one aspect of Berlin which a lot of people come to Berlin for is the party scene, the club scene, which I have never partaken in, but I like knowing that it's there. Yeah, and I can kind of feel that
the vibe,
energy somehow or another. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also very centrally located.
Yeah.
Which makes it very easy to get around Europe. And I like that because I was in Warsaw this week. It's an hour flight. Vienna's an hour flight or a 6-hour train ride, you know, and it's, I like that a lot about Berlin. So, and the fact that we have how many great orchestras in this city?
Right. Yeah.
5 or something like that. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the weather's a downside.
Wait till summer.
Yeah.
Then we all love it.
Well, I tell you what, that's the problem. I've been in Germany 6 years now, and I haven't ever spent a summer here.
No, that's too bad.
So it's a real pity, but...
But you're also, I can think of worse places than being south of France.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to complain about that. Yeah.
So you're drawn to the second Viennese school. Are there any American composers besides Gershwin and Bernstein that you are drawn to?
Let me answer that question in a moment, because you mentioned these things that the cabaret, the Threepenny Opera, the other musicals that I'm doing. And since we're mentioning the Threepenny Opera, we should shout out to our friend Adam Bensby, who, because I'm the second conductor on that amazing production at the Berliner Ensemble, and Adam is the main conductor.
That was Barry Kosky's production,
It's
right?
Barry's production, yeah. And when we were in Vienna, I ran into Barry on the street.
Right, you mentioned
Did I tell you
it,
this?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Because he was having his magic flute down there. No, it was Zauberflöte. No.
His Nozze, his Figaro.
Nozze, yeah, right, Nozze Figaro, yeah.
But yeah, we should say hi to our friend Adam, who who is the king of Weimar music of Berlin, and he knows everything about this. But what was the question?
American composers.
Yeah. So we talked about these American songbook composers that were so formative for me, but it was really Lenny and Copeland who grabbed my attention as a teenager and as a college student, and so I really got to know the entire oeuvre of both of those composers. I played almost all of Lenny's music. Haven't performed it all, but I played touches quite a few times in concert, but I haven't played The Age of Anxiety. But then when I used to play piano a lot, I played all of Copeland's piano music.
Wonderful. I love his piano music. It's a shame it's not performed more.
Yeah, especially outside of the States. Of course, his piano variations, I have to say, I think is the greatest piece of American piano music.
I would have to agree with you on that. His sonata is amazing.
The sonata, yeah, that was a party piece for me when I used to practice more. And then he has a Piano Fantasy, which is from Copeland's serial period in the 1950s. And I only performed that a couple of times. And then he has a whole bunch of smaller pieces.
Yeah, the one down a country lane, you know.
Right,
all these wonderful little pieces that are just so important to me because, you know, I write miniatures, you know, like lyric pieces. And those were very much an influence on me. So, yeah. So moving forward, you've got these projects this summer. You're going to Greece. You're going to go to Albania, and you just got back from the States, where you did your Gershwin recital, also, right? In two places, right?
Yeah. Well, I first did it in Berlin, and then I did it in Arizona at my university, where I also visited my family, and then in Vienna. And that particular program I'll do for another year and a half.
Oh, it's a Schoenberg, what anniversary?
The sesquicentennial,
yes.
Which is a lot of syllables for his 150th birthday.
Right.
So I'll do that through that birthday year. And since we're talking about Schoenberg, people are going to think I'm obsessed with Schoenberg. I guess I am.
You are.
I should mention the repertoire of chamber orchestral pieces of Schoenberg and his circle. So he had his, in 1920-ish, his Society for Private Musical Performances, which he and his circle founded on some very rigorous esoteric principles that no critics are going to be allowed, and you have to purchase a membership in our society to come to the concerts, and the programs will not be advertised because we don't want people to pick and choose what they come to, and we will repeat pieces over and over and over again so that these difficult new pieces of the time can be repeated and the listener can get used to them, instead of just hearing them once, flash in a pan, and then they're gone and you don't have time to digest it with your ear and your mind and your heart. And so, of course, like musicians today, like us, they then didn't have a lot of money to hire the Vienna Philharmonic to perform Erwartung, for example. So, or these other recent pieces, Mahler symphonies, which were hot off the press. And so they were a real factory of arrangements. They would arrange these giant orchestral pieces for smaller forces, Mahler symphonies for 13 players, or their own music, like Webern's 6 pieces, his Opus 6, which is arranged for, I think, about 8 players. And one of the things I got really into was this repertoire, because they, in just the short 2, 3, 4 years of this society's existence, they created a really rich body of works, of arrangements. These arrangements became a repertoire in and of themselves, which were forgotten for quite a long time because the arrangements were made for that time and place, and then they were resurrected later in the 20th century. And then similar arrangements were made of other music, and that body of repertoire became a special thing in and of itself. So it exists to this day, and I made one of these arrangements myself. And so for the Schoenberg Sesquicentennial, I will be doing a bunch of these arrangements, conducting them, and hopefully putting some really cool programs together to celebrate that.
That's exciting. That sounds great. I'll be interested in attending. Yes.
I hope you're there.
Yeah, you too. So I want to thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you,
having
Craig.
this conversation. We'll do it again. We always do it anyway, but it's nice to share. And I just want to say thank you. And I would just, if you want to know more about Levi, he's got a really wonderful website, and it's levihammer.com, right? And I recommend that you go and take a look at it and keep up with his activities. And we look forward to having him back. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Okay.
Yeah.